He's founder and director of the Amen Clinic for Behavioral Medicine, pioneers in nuclear brain imaging and assessment. He's authored 15 books, including Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, and Making a Good Brain Great.
One of the most important things I do when I teach parent training is teach parents to spend time with their kids, to be good at listening to their kids. And if you do that, your kids will listen to you when they're teenagers. There's no rule that kids will be problematic.
I agree
when they are teenagers. That's not the norm. Oh, they're having trouble. They're just teenagers. Well, in fact, 67% of teenagers never really have any big problems. It's a third of them that have problems. We go, oh, well, they're just being normal. No, they're not. And so with the right bonding, you still can have a huge influence on teenagers. I wrote a book once called Healing the Hardware of the Soul, and in it I talk about how you can make your child a Republican, a Democrat, or anything you want. And how you do that is you stay bonded and connected to your kids. They will pick your values. If you are mean to them, if you don't spend any time with them, they will pick the opposite values just to make you mad.
Boy, that's a true statement. I've seen that happen in friends' lives and their children, and I've seen good things happen. I do, as a dad, try to spend time with the girls, but things you're saying is just putting a magnifying glass on it. We have to do that as parents, or we're going to lose this entire generation. It's slipping away, but we can turn it around.
Absolutely. And when we have two-parent working families, everybody's running so fast, nobody's really paying attention to the relationship. And when I teach parent training, first thing I do is I teach parents about goal setting. What kind of parent do you want to be? What kind of child do you want to raise? You've got to get that in your head first, because then all of your behavior is related to the goals. What kind of parent do I want to be? I want to be kind. I want to be thoughtful. I want to be present. I want to be effective. I want to be firm. Okay, so everything I do gets filtered through that. What kind of kids do I want to raise? I want to raise kids that are responsible, which means I can't bail them out when they're not being responsible. I want to raise kids that have good self-esteem, which means I can't call them names. Because if I call them names, they're going to be calling themselves those names. I want them to be adaptable. So everything gets filtered through the goals. The second thing is bonding. And bonding, I think, requires two things. Time. Actual physical time. And a willingness to listen. And so I teach parents this one exercise called special time, which is 20 minutes a day. It's not a lot of time. 20 minutes a day, every day. Do something with them that they want to do. That doesn't mean necessarily take them to the mall, because you can't do that in 20 minutes. But 20 minutes a day, do something that they want to do, whether it's play a game, take a walk, whatever. And during that time, no commands, no questions, no directions. It's not a time to hammer them about their room.
That's difficult for a parent.
It's not a time to hammer them about their schoolwork or their relationship. No, it's just be with them. And when you do that, they'll want to be with you. They will talk to you. And why do kids not talk to parents? Because parents talk too much. It's like you have to use less words. And so I teach them active listening. That's, as a therapist, we're trained in active listening. What's that? It's before you give your 2 cents, really hear what the other person is saying. So, for example, if my son came home and said, "Dad, I want to have blue hair." Now, I don't know what your father would have said if you came home and said, "I want to have blue." I know what my dad would have
he would have frowned upon that.
My dad would have said, "There's no damn way in hell, as long as you live in this house, you're not going to have blue hair." Boom! But what does that do? It stops the conversation, or it starts a fight. Active listening teaches you repeat what you hear, and then be quiet long enough to hear what's behind it. Oh, you want to have blue hair. I haven't told him he could have blue hair. I just repeated it. Oh, you want to have blue hair. And then he might say something like, "Yeah, all the kids are wearing it that way." Now, again, I don't know what your father would have said if you came home and said, "All the kids are..." I know what mine would have said. There's no damn way in hell. As long as you live in the house, you're going to have blue hair. If they're going to jump off a bridge, are you going to go with them?
Right.
But again, it stops the conversation. All the kids are wearing it that way. Sounds like you want to be like the other kids, right? You haven't said that he can do that, right? You're just repeating back what you hear. And then he might say, "Sometimes I feel like I don't fit in." which is really the crux of the whole blue hair thing. Now, if it was my mother and I said, I don't feel like I fit in, she goes, what's the matter with you? You're a nice boy, you're a good-looking boy, of course you fit in. No, just repeat back what you hear. Sounds like you think the color of your hair has something to do with whether or not you fit in. Now, if at the end of half an hour he wants to have blue hair, I'm going to tell him, no damn way in hell, as long as he lives in my house. We're not looking weird, because if you look weird, who do you spend time with? Weirdos!
But you listened, and that made a difference, a total difference, in the next time he comes to talk with you. But what you're saying to us is so many homes are more like boot camps as opposed to places of safety or safe havens.
Right.
And when we walk in the front door of our own home, if we can't escape the madness of this world and feel safe there, then where can we?
Well, and parents are never taught this very simple exercise to listen. Now, why do kids mind better for their dads than their moms? Moms use too many words. Dads don't use as many words. Moms talk too much. And that's when I do parent training over and over. I got to get dads to do a better job of bonding, spending time, and moms to be quieter. You know, and it's like discipline's very important. You know, do what I say or else, not do what I say, and then 4 pages later, they're still like, why did I not do this? Because moms use too many words. So I think of goal setting, bonding, clear expectations. Very helpful for development. Kids need to know what the rules are. Rules are good. One of the best things about the Old Testament, really clear rules. And so I think you should actually post them on the refrigerator. Now, no more than 8. As I teach parent training, I had one guy with obsessive compulsive personality disorder, 110 rules he put on his refrigerator.
Ooh, I think it's a little overwhelming.
A little too much. 8. And I like the first one is we treat each other with respect. Now, in parentheses, I put for my behaviorally disordered kids, this means no hitting, no kicking, no biting, no name calling. Now, if that's a rule in your house, you have to treat your wife with respect, because children do what you do, not what you tell them.
Exactly.
That's true.
So you model behavior for them. You want healthy kids? You got to act healthy yourself and in your relationship with your spouse. The second rule is we tell the truth. Which means if they lie, they not only get a consequence for the bad thing that they did, they get a consequence for lying. And for kids who lie, and a lot of ADD kids particularly, they lie a lot. We do this thing called truth training, which is lying's a problem for you. Not you, but lying's a problem. So you identify it as a problem. And you say, you know, sometimes I'm going to ask you questions I already know the answer to. And if you tell me the truth, I'll be so happy. And if you lie to me, you're going to get a consequence for lying. And so you put it out there. This is a problem and we're going to work on it. Another rule I really like is do what mom and dad say the first time. That is so important for parents to believe that they're the authority. When you allow a child to argue with you, you're hurting their development. Now, in parentheses, I put as your parents, we love you and we want to hear your opinion.
I was going to ask you about that. Is it okay
More
to let
than
them
twice constitutes arguing.
Okay.
Because if you allow them to go over and over, you're actually setting them up to be oppositional.
That is so true.
You want to be really clear. We're the authority. We have the God-given responsibility to be the authority. Now, we want to hear you and we'll do active listening, but when I say no, I mean no. And if I allow you to argue with me, I'm actually setting you up to be an arguer. I have one little boy I treat. He used to follow his mother around the house for 2.5 hours asking her the same question. Now she's ready to beat him, right? But who's the idiot in the situation? I'm thinking of myself. It's like, you know, and my little one, who's now 18, she had a tendency to argue. But I made this the rule. And so after the second time, I said, you know, you can go ahead and ask me again. But if you do, this is the consequence that's going to happen. No arguing. That didn't mean I didn't listen to her at times.
True.
But when I said, no, you're not going to the concert, and she went after the third time, she had a consequence. I'm not kidding. And I used to tell her, you know, you can go ahead and ask me this other time. And you can test me to see if I'm like going to follow through or not. It's up to you. I guarantee you I'm going to. Go ahead, ask me. See, I'm not mad. I'm not screaming at her. I'm just dead serious, and I'm playing with her.
Right.
But I'm also really serious. Do what mom and dad say the first time. There's a study on when parents abuse kids. It's after they have told their child to do something 8 times that they just can't take it anymore.
And you're saying more than twice, it becomes an argumentative point.
and you discipline them. Now, it's very important. You have clear rules. One more rule. Clean your room.
I like that rule.
Clean your room. It's not fair to the spouse of the person your child's going to marry if you don't teach them
That's right.
to be organized. And parents who do everything for their children, they're ruining the kid.
Right.
There's a wonderful study from Harvard where they looked at people actually over 60 years to see what happens in childhood and adolescence that correlates with self-esteem. And the only thing that correlated with self-esteem was whether or not you worked as a child, whether or not you had responsibilities or had a job. That highly correlated with self-esteem. Doing everything for a child is a nightmare for them. So getting them to pick up their rooms, having chores, working around the house, it's very important for their sense of themselves. Now, when they follow the rules, you have to notice them. You have to reward them. How do we train animals? We train them through positive reinforcement. I actually have a book that I wrote called The Most Important Thing in Life I Learned from a Penguin. And I wrote this book because when I would tell the story during parent training, people used to send me penguins. So it's true, I collect penguins. And initially I only had 3 of them on my desk, 3 little wooden penguins, because it reminded me of this story. I used to live in Hawaii. I did my child psychiatry training in Hawaii. And my son was 7. He's now 29. My son was 7, and I took him to Sea Life Park. It's like SeaWorld. They have sea animal shows. And I was doing special time with him. And at the end of the day, he grabbed my shirt. He said, I want to see Fat Freddy. I said, who's Fat Freddy? He said, the penguin, Dad. Don't you know anything? And we found Fat Freddy had one more show. And so we went into this huge stadium. And I'm with my son and, I don't know, 300 other people. And this fat penguin comes out on stage, climbs like a 20-foot high diving board, goes to the end of the diving board, bounces, and then jumps into the water. And I went,
Oh, my
wow,
goodness.
how cool is that? And then Freddie gets out of the pool. He goes over to the trainer. He counts with his flipper, bowls with his nose, jumps through a hoop of fire. And I'm thinking, how cool is this? And we're having a good time, and I'm bonding with my son. And then the trainer asks Freddie to go get something, and Freddie goes and gets it, and he brings it right back. And in my head, I went, wow, I asked this kid to get something for me, and he wants to have a discussion.
Right. Right.
And I knew my son was smarter than the penguin. So I went up to the trainer after the show, and I went, how'd you get Freddie to do all these really cool things? And she looked at my son, and then she looked at me, and she said, unlike parents, whenever Freddie does anything like what I want him to do, I notice him. I give him a hug, and I give him a fish. And a light went on in my head that even though my son didn't like fish, and whenever he did what I wanted him to do, I paid no attention to him at all. Because I was a busy guy like my own dad.
Probably only paid attention to him when he did something you didn't like.
That's right. And so I was inadvertently training him to be a little monster rather than encouraging him to be good. So I collect penguins as a way to remind myself to notice the good things about the people in my life more than the bad things. What do you think Freddie would have done if he was having a bad day? And he didn't go do the thing that trainer Julie asked him to do. And all of a sudden, because she had PMS, she's like screaming at him, you stupid penguin! I can't believe I ever met a penguin as dumb as you. We got to ship you off to the Antarctic and get a replacement. Well, I mean, what he would have done, depending on his temperament, is he may have gone off to a corner and cried.
Right.
Or he may have bitten Julie.
Right.
Right? But what do you do when you're having a bad day?
Wow.
I mean, do you notice what you like? And in that way, encourage it. This is how you have personal power. Or do you think it's your God-given right to give the child hell?
Wow.
I was at Marine World. It's a sea animal place up in Northern California one day, and I took my kids, and they had whale shows. I went to the whale show. It was so much fun. And I sort of like to understand animal behavior, because I think a lot of it's like human behavior. And the 2 killer whales, one of them was perfect and did everything that the trainer asked. The other one wasn't doing anything that day. And so the trainer sent the whale to its pen, gave him a timeout. And since they ended the show early, he said, anybody have any questions? So I'm like down there. And I go, I noticed you gave the whale a timeout when he wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing. Yeah, that's the most effective way to discipline them. I said, well, there are a lot of people think you should have gotten a big stick and beaten the whale. What would have happened if you would have disciplined the whale like that? She looked at me like I was the dumbest person on the planet. She said, no, 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 we don't do that. Because if we did that, the whale would never trust me again and never perform for me. But too often, particularly many Christians, they use one verse in the Bible about spare the rod and spoil the child. And they go, no, I'm supposed to beat the child. It's like, no, you're supposed to discipline the child. If you beat them, especially when you're mad and out of control, what you're going to do is you're going to secure resentment in the child.
And they won't
Let's
trust
be
you.
thoughtful in how we discipline. Doesn't mean you don't discipline. First, you notice what you like more than what you don't like. And then discipline is important, but it has to be done with a thoughtful brain rather than a brain that's angry and out of control.
Wow.
So when I teach parent training, I actually teach parents self-control. So I teach them how to do deep breathing exercises. Before you ever hit a child, you have to take 10 deep breaths and ask yourself, does my behavior get me my goals? Is this the kind of parent I want to be? Is this the kind of child that I want to raise? Now, sometimes spanking a child, I think, is fine. I remember with my own son, he's 3 years old, and he ran across the street at a corner, at a round corner where you couldn't see either way. I wanted to imprint on his brain, we don't cross the street unless mommy or daddy are with you. And so he got a good spanking. Right? But I was completely in control of myself, and I planned it thoughtfully.
Yes.
To just, I'm mad at you, let me smack you across the head.
Right.
No, that's abuse. It's
Right.
not thoughtful. So I use, like the trainer with the killer whales, I think timeout's a great way to discipline. So for little kids, you put them in a corner about their time in minutes. They're about the time, their age in minutes. So if they're 2, you put them in for 2 minutes. And you tell them it's very important. Your time starts when you're quiet. You don't send them to timeout and let them scream at you for a half an hour. No way. Your time starts when you're quiet. And you don't explain it. You just get stupid. Your time starts when you're quiet. And you'll find that initially they're in timeout for half an hour because they're used to being able to get their way by screaming at you. But when they get it, that half an hour turns into 15 minutes, turns into 7 minutes, turns into 2 minutes. And they learn that when you say something, you mean it. You are dead serious. Now, if their sibling comes by and bothers them when they're in timeout, their sibling has to take their place. The siblings just get out of the way when you're doing timeout, the child. Now, if they're 12 or 13, you don't put them in a chair in the corner. You time them out from things they like, whether it's television or video games, the phone,
The phone, yes,
the
a popular
computer,
one.
text messaging, and so on. Timeout's a good way to discipline kids. But you use less timeouts if you're doing special time with them.
And all of these things, you're developing your child's brain. All these things, all these ways that you react and train your child is securing your child to have a better chance to develop a healthy brain.
Well, you're actually developing their brain by your being their frontal lobes, if you will. The front part of the brain is what we call the executive part of the brain. That's the part that's not fully developed until you're 25. So until they're making good decisions for themselves, you need to be supervising them and helping them make good decisions. Those parents that watch, those parents who know where their children are, what they're doing, who they're with, raise healthier kids. Those are the kids that get into trouble a lot less than those parents who are absent.
Good stuff.
Dr. Amen, you've given us so much great information for parents. I want to thank you so much. And we hope that you've enjoyed this. It's given you great information, and this will help you create healthier brains and healthier children.